He told us there were a lot of bad people out there. And he taught us a little bit about conspiracies and things like that.
The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist.
I believe in God, you know?
Does that faith sustain you?
Of course it does.
But are you 100% certain that Jackson was guilty? Are you 95% certain? How would you categorise, after you've immersed yourself in this for so long, how would you categorise your own belief about what he may or may not have done?
I'm 100% certain. I mean, I've and you can see in the new film, there's interviews with LAPD detectives, there's interviews with Santa Barbara Sheriff's Department detective who investigated Jackson. They were all convinced that he was a pedophile, that he liked to have sex with children. So, and you know, I've got to know Wade and James also. I'd be naturally suspicious. I don't want to stake my reputation on believing two people who are lying to me.
They had both, just to be clear for viewers who don't follow, they had both sworn under oath at one of Jackson's cases involving the child abuse. They both swore under oath he hadn't abused them. Then they, later in their lives, they reversed that and said he had. I mean, that's one of the reasons why a lot of people have been very sceptical about their testimony.
But that's the story of Leaving Neverland. I mean, Wade Robson was defense witness number one in the 2005 criminal trial. And he's probably one of the main reasons why Jackson walked free out of that court, you know?
Welcome back, everyone. We're dusting off the mics and firing up the computers. The announcement of Leaving Neverland 2 dragged us back into the fray. Some aren't happy with it airing, but we think you should never interrupt an enemy while he's in the process of destroying himself. The more lies this stack, the louder the truth rings. Sure, it's an hour of pure cringe to slog through, but it's likely worth it to set the record straight. It hasn't even dropped yet as we write this, and we're already drowning in nonsense. In 2005, Michael Jackson faced trial in Santa Maria, California. In the trial, People vs. Michael Joe Jackson. It's been 20 years, so if you're rusty on the trial, our 6.5 hour breakdown, V for Vendetta, V for Vengeance, is on the channel. For now, here's the quick rundown. He was charged with molesting 13-year-old Gavin Arvizo at Neverland Ranch, plus giving alcohol to minors, conspiracy, and attempted molestation. It kicked off February 28th, ran 14 weeks, and ended June 13th with a full acquittal after 7 days of jury deliberation. The spark? The 2003 documentary Living with Michael Jackson, where he's seen holding Gavin's hand and defending sleepovers with kids. That led to a 10-count indictment, 4 molestation charges, 4 intoxication counts, plus conspiracy and an attempt. Wade was a strong witness, no doubt. He didn't need to fake it back then. But pinning it all on him? That's nonsense. The defence had a lineup. Macaulay Culkin, Brett Barnes, his sister Carly, their mum Marie, and Joy Robson, Wade's mother, all vouched for Jackson. Here is why Michael Jackson really won his case. It is because the defence successfully exposed several inconsistencies and falsehoods in the testimony of Gavin Arvizo, his brother Star Arvizo, and his mother Janet Arvizo, which significantly weakened the prosecution's case. Several of Gavin Arvizo's claims, under cross-examination by Jackson's defence attorney Thomas Mesereau, and through contradictory evidence presented during the trial, were exposed as inconsistent, implausible, or outright fabrications. Gavin testified that Jackson gave him wine disguised in a Diet Coke can during a flight from Miami to California in February 2003 as part of the, quote, Jesus juice narrative to intoxicate him before alleged molestation. But Cynthia Bell, the flight attendant on that private jet, testified on May 3rd, 2005 that she served Jackson wine in a can but never saw him hand it to Gavin. She stated she was the one distributing drinks and that Gavin did not appear intoxicated. Additionally, Gavin's brother Star claimed Jackson handed him the can, but their stories didn't align, and Bell's account directly refuted this. Gavin claimed Jackson molested him multiple times between February and March of 2003, after the airing of Living with Michael Jackson on February the 3rd, 2003. He said the abuse began once the documentary sparked public scrutiny. The defence highlighted the implausibility of this timeline. Jackson was under intense media and legal pressure after the documentary, with authorities already monitoring him. Witnesses, including Neverland staff, testified that the Arvizo's family's visits were chaotic but showed no signs of abuse. Gavin portrayed himself as an innocent victim, denying any wrongdoing during his stays at Neverland and suggesting Jackson corrupted him with alcohol and pornography. But multiple Neverland employees testified that Gavin and Star engaged in disruptive behaviour, stealing wine, sneaking into Jackson's bedroom, crashing golf carts, and accessing adult magazines on their own, contradicting the narrative that Jackson had corrupted them. Witnesses testified that Gavin and Star roamed freely, often unsupervised, contradicting their claims of being controlled or groomed by Jackson. Their documented misbehaviour painted them as instigators, rather than victims. During the trial, Gavin admitted he initially told school officials and early investigators in 2003 that Jackson never touched him inappropriately, only to later claim the abuse happened. In June 2003, shortly after leaving Neverland Ranch, Gavin was interviewed by the Los Angeles Department of Child and Family Services as part of a probe triggered by the documentary. He explicitly denied any molestation, saying Jackson was nice and like a father. His story only changed months later, after the family consulted lawyers and the criminal investigation intensified. This flip-flop was a cornerstone of the defence's case, with Mesereau arguing Gavin was coached by his mother or lawyers to lie for financial gain. Gavin alleged that Jackson showed him and Star adult websites on a computer at Neverland, and Star claimed Jackson gave him a password to access such websites, alleging they viewed pornography together as part of the grooming. Forensic analysis of Jackson's computers, seized in the 2003 raid, did find adult material, but no evidence of access during the Arvizo's visits in February and March of 2003, or of the Arvizo boys using them. The passwords Starr mentioned were generic or unverifiable, and his description of the sites was vague. Staff testimony also confirmed the boys used computers unsupervised, contradicting Jackson's direct involvement. Starr claimed Jackson showed him and Gavin a barely legal magazine at Neverland. Under cross-examination, Mesereau trapped Starr into admitting the specific issue he described wasn't published until after the Arvizos had left Neverland, proving Jackson couldn't have shown it to him. This was a pivotal moment exposing a
up with a jury that I felt would be open-minded to the truth and not judge him because he was a different kind of person.
Right, because I remember that was always the question in my mind of, well, is Michael Jackson gay or straight? Now, that doesn't necessarily, mean that he's into children, but he's being accused of molesting boys. So the gay part was always a question in my mind. And I remember at one point I went through the paperwork from the sheriff's office of all the stuff that they found in Neverland Ranch. And it was actually a large pornography collection of like straight porn, like, kind of stuff I would watch. And at that point I said, okay, that's all nonsense. Michael Jackson seemed like he was a straight man.
Well, when they raided Neverland, and again, it was 70 plus sheriffs raided Neverland, they found hordes of Playboy, Penthouse, and what I call girly magazines.
Right.
And they didn't know how to explain this because they knew this could help the defense in explaining he's not a pedophile. He's not someone who's enraptured with young males. Mm-hmm. He's a heterosexual male who likes to look at beautiful women who are naked. Mm-hmm. And they came up with a way for them to explain it they thought would help them. They said your typical pedophile grooms their victim by showing sexually explicit material. So they tried to say that all of these magazines, which were everywhere, and which he had his people going out and buying for him, they tried to say all of this was part of what a pedophile does to groom a victim. That was their explanation. I don't think it flew at all.
Starr testified that he saw Jackson molest Gavin twice in Jackson's bedroom at Neverland Ranch in early 2003. He claimed he was lying on the bed, pretending to be asleep, when he observed Jackson touching Gavin's genitals under his clothes on one occasion and over his clothes on another. Under cross-examination, Starr's account became shaky. He couldn't consistently recall details like the exact positioning of everyone in the room or the timing of these events. His story conflicted with Gavin's vague and shifting descriptions of the same incidents. Additionally, no physical evidence supported his claims, and Neverland staff testified that the boys often entered Jackson's room uninvited, undermining the controlled scenario Starr had described. Starr alleged that Jackson showed him and Gavin how to masturbate by demonstrating it himself during one of their sleepovers, framing it as part of the grooming process. This claim was uncorroborated by Gavin, who never mentioned such an incident in his testimony, despite being present for the alleged events. Forensic evidence from Jackson's bedroom and the lack of consistent timelines between the brothers' stories undermined Starr's account. Additionally, Starr's history of accessing adult material independently, as per staff testimony, suggested he might have invented Jackson's involvement. Janet Arvizo, the mother of Gavin and Starr Arvizo, alleged that Jackson molested her son Gavin and held her family captive at Neverland Ranch. Her testimony was critical to the prosecution's case, but it crumbled under cross-examination by defence attorney Thomas Mesereau, revealing numerous lies, exaggerations and inconsistencies. These falsehoods, combined with her erratic behaviour on the stand, severely damaged her credibility and contributed to Jackson's acquittal on June 13, 2005. Janet claimed that from February to March 2003, Jackson and his associates held her and her children prisoner at Neverland Ranch to force them to defend him after the Living with Michael Jackson documentary aired. She alleged they were denied freedom, monitored constantly, and threatened. But evidence shows the Arvizos left Neverland multiple times during this period without resistance. For example, on February 25, 2005, testimony confirmed they went to a dental appointment and shopping trips off-ranch. Janet herself departed Neverland on March 10, 2003 with her children, contradicting her captivity narrative. Witnesses like Neverland manager Jesus Salas testified she was free to leave and even requested transportation to depart. Janet claimed that during their alleged captivity, she faked a medical emergency, a, quote, woman problem, unquote, to escape Neverland, implying she was desperate to leave but couldn't. Records and testimony showed she received lavish treatment during this period, including a $140 full body wax and salon visits arranged by Jackson's staff. She returned to Neverland willingly after these outings, and staff confirmed she never expressed distress or a need to flee. Her emergency story didn't align with her freedom of movement or the timeline of departures. Janet alleged that Jackson himself threatened her and her family, implying he warned them to stay silent or face consequences after the documentary aired. No evidence or witnesses supported this claim. Jackson's interactions with the Arvizos, as described by staff and recorded in the rebuttal video, where Janet and her kids praised him, showed no hostility. Janet's own testimony shifted, sometimes blaming Jackson directly, other times his, quote, German associates, a vague reference jurors found bizarre, and lacked specifics like dates or exact words. Her children didn't corroborate personal threats from Jackson either. Janet portrayed herself as naive about Jackson's fame and wealth, claiming she only saw him as a kind benefactor helping her cancer-stricken son Gavin, not as a financial target. Testimony from witnesses like Dave Legrand, Jackson's former attorney, and Ann Serrano, ex-wife of George Lopez, revealed Janet aggressively pursued celebrities for support during Gavin's illness, including Jackson. She secured donations and gifts from him well before the 2003 allegations, showing awareness of his resources. Her J.C. Penney lawsuit history further indicated she was savvy about exploiting situations for money.
What do you make of this whole story that's out there? Can you believe it? You know him.
I don't believe it personally.
Michael's been a long-time resident of Trump Tower, and last night the Donald strongly reiterated his defense of Jackson with Larry King by going after the accuser's mother.
She's had plenty of experience at going after people, and she goes after them viciously and violently, and I saw a story and I read another story about some of the things she's done. And I don't believe it.
But you know what it's like when an indictment comes down.
It's tough.
It's presumption.
It's tough. It's tough to win. But I have a feeling he's going to win, Larry.
I had no idea he'd be that strong defensive of him. And good for Donald, you know. You know, we do believe in innocence in this country, hopefully.
He lives in the building, and he's been a total gentleman. And we've never seen anything like what we're reading about.
Donald Trump, the king of New York real estate, is actually a landlord to the king of pop. Billy Bush spoke to the Donald in the very tower where Jackson owns a residence.
What do you make of this whole story that's out there? Can you believe it? You know him.
I don't believe it personally. There are many people that feel that Michael is being used in a way to make money. I just know that Michael Jackson's been with me for a long time, and we've never had a problem.
Janet insisted she never intended to sue Jackson or seek financial compensation, claiming her only goal was to protect her children from his alleged abuse. The defence then presented evidence that Janet consulted civil attorneys, including Larry Feldman, who handled the 1993 Jordan Chandler settlement shortly after leaving Neverland in 2003, before the criminal case escalated. Witnesses like comedian George Lopez and Chris Tucker testified that Janet and her children repeatedly asked them for money, suggesting a pattern of financial opportunism. Her history with the J.C. Penney settlement and later welfare fraud conviction in 2006 further contradicted her altruistic stance. Janet denied rehearsing or coaching Gavin and Starr to lie about Jackson's alleged abuse, insisting their stories were spontaneous and truthful. But both boys' testimonies contained rehearsed elements: Gavin's initial denial to authorities in 2003, Starr's provably false magazine claim, and shifted only after months of legal consultations with Janet present. Her admitted perjury in the J.C. Penney case, teaching her kids to lie about abuse, and their phrasing in the rebuttal video suggested coaching. Jurors noted the boys' scripted delivery, with one saying Janet had them trained.
My children and me know what rejection is. To be neglected, to be spit on, to be talked about, to be made an outsider, only because of our status in life or what we were going through. And Michael did not have that. He said, come to him, not just Gavin, but Starr and Davelin and me, and called us his family. And Gavin was the one that asked him, could I call you Daddy? And Michael said, of course. And so, through him, it sparked Starr and Davelin calling him Daddy Michael. Very innocent and beautiful relationship, which everyone has spun it out of control. It's a wish come true. For example, to see my children interact with an ideal role, a father role model. He plays with them, laughs with them. He lets them win.
He wrestles with them.
He makes jokes with them.
Go on the rides together.
He shows them.
Watch movies together.
He shows them the basic foundation of what life is, and that's a loving family. The stronger your foundation, the higher your building is.
My first impression was that he's a very loving, caring, humble man. He took us under his wing when nobody else would. He didn't turn us away like all the people were doing. And he gave my brother the extra little spark he needed in his mind, because my brother was to the point where he couldn't even move. He couldn't even talk. And he gave my little brother so much.
Wait. You know how Bashir... Hey, you know how Bashir zoomed in on him holding hands? Do that the same thing.
Because
Because that's what a mother does with a son, or a father does with a son, you know? Yeah. And they try to make it out to be something wrong and dirty. Put your back straight.
The hand holding thing.
Okay.
How did that make you feel?
Oh, we're on camera?
Yeah.
Oh.
We are?
Yeah, I was just rolling.
Oh, God! This is the outtakes.
Her admitted lies under oath in the J.C. Penney case were leveraged by Mesereau to show she'd coached her kids to lie before. She confirmed this on the stand, admitting he lied in that deposition because my mum told me to. Janet Arvizo's lies, ranging from fabricated threats and captivity to denying financial motives and coaching, were systematically dismantled during the trial. Her history of deceit, erratic demeanour, and the lack of evidence supporting her claims led jurors to reject her testimony entirely. One juror later called her the weakest link in the prosecution's case, while another labelled her a con artist. The defence tied Gavin's lies to his family's history of grifting. His mother Janet's welfare fraud conviction in 2006 and the family's $152,000 JC penny settlement from a fabricated abuse claim suggested Gavin was part of a pattern of deception for profit. Jurors found Gavin unconvincing. One juror later said, "He didn't seem believable," noting his rehearsed demeanour and the family's con artist vibe. Another remarked that his story didn't add up given the timeline and evidence. The defence painted the Arvizo family as seasoned opportunists. Their successful JC Penney lawsuit and Janet's $18,000 plus welfare fraud, for which she was later convicted in 2006, suggested a pattern of exploiting situations for money. Beyond the Arvizo family, the prosecution's key supporting witnesses, Adrian McManus, Ralph Chacon, Philip Lamarck, Blanca Francia, and Qasim Abdul were exposed as unreliable due to proven lies, prior perjury, tabloid deals, contradictions with defence witnesses, and clear motives like revenge or money. Their discrediting reinforced the defence's narrative that the case was built on opportunists and fabricators, not facts. This, alongside the Arvizo's collapse, led jurors to acquit Jackson, with one summing up: the prosecution's witnesses lied more than they told the truth. Witnesses like maid Adrian McManus and security guard Ralph Chacon, who supported the prosecution's claims of prior misconduct, were discredited due to their involvement in a failed 1990s lawsuit against Jackson. They were found guilty of stealing from him and ordered to pay over $1 million in legal fees, suggesting revenge as a motive. Many witnesses were former employees fired or let go from Neverland, involved in the 1990s lawsuit against Jackson. Their losses in that case, over $1.5 million in total damages and fees, and subsequent tabloid deals, gave them clear incentives to exaggerate or fabricate stories for revenge or profit.
Pardon me? Oh, first case. Okay, this is interesting because anyone who followed the case knew about the issue of 1108 evidence, which in California is called prior bad acts evidence. And what California allows, and few states do allow, is that in a case like this, you can bring in evidence of other alleged similar acts, even if they were never charged with a crime, and even if they're not the essence of the charge in this particular case. So what they said in their opening statement was, we have evidence that 5 young men were molested. And we're going to present all of that to you. And to make it even worse, it appeared, the judge did something I've never seen happen in a case like this. With respect to 3 of those alleged 5 victims, he allowed witnesses to come in and say they saw them molested without the prosecution having to bring the actual alleged victims in. Okay? So they did that. They put on 3 guards who had worked at Neverland to say they saw these 3 people molested. One of them, Macaulay Culkin, okay, the actor. All right? Now, those 3 guards had sued Michael Jackson, claiming that he wrongfully terminated them. He had cross-complained, saying that they had stolen property from him. It was the longest civil trial in the history of Santa Maria. They lost their case. Jackson won his cross-complaint. He had $1 million judgment against all of them. There were judicial findings of fraud against all of them. They had gone to the tabloids and sold stories. And the 3 people they say they saw molested, they were my first 3 witnesses. They came in and said they were never touched. So when that happens, I think we were able to effectively take all of us and say, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you can't believe these prosecutors. You can't believe their case. They'll say anything to try and win. Now, the one you're talking about never showed up. He's the one who got a settlement in the early 90s. Now, my understanding is the prosecutors tried to get him to show up, and he wouldn't. If he had, I had witnesses who were going to come in and say he told them it never happened and that he would never talk to his parents again for what they made him say. And it turned out he had gone into court and gotten legal emancipation from his parents. His mother testified that she hadn't talked to him in 11 years. So, there was a problem there as well. There was a fifth alleged victim who testified, who said that Michael Jackson had been playing with him and had gone too far and touched his testicles, and he needed 5 years of therapy after it. And during the first therapy session, the DA was present. And he also admitted he wanted money from him, and his mother wanted money from Jackson, and his mother went to a tabloid and sold the story as well. So you put all that together, and I submit that it helped us.
Unlike the defence's character witnesses, these prosecution witnesses lacked independent evidence, such as photographs, documents, or neutral observers to back their claims. Their stories often relied on memories from a decade earlier, making them easy to challenge. Mesereau's strategy was to expose their prior and financial motivations, turning their testimony into a liability for the prosecution. Jurors consistently cited these witnesses as uncredible. One said, "The ex-employees were a parade of liars," while another noted, "They all had axes to grind and pockets to fill." If you want more details on these witnesses, make sure you watch our videos The Hunt, The Neverland 5, and The Hunt, Jason Francia.
The defense says, hey, it's not Jackson who was the predator, it was Jackson who was the prey. And the alleged victim and his mother were the predators. They saw an easy mark, they saw a guy who liked young kids and wanted to be around them, and they saw the money.
They had done it before, argued Mesereau. He brought to the stand newspaper editor Connie Keenan, who'd received a phone call from the accuser's mother.
Her son was ill with cancer, and they were losing their house, and they were losing their car because of the medical expenses.
Keenan felt sorry for the sick boy and eventually agreed to run a story. A few weeks later, the mother called again.
She said, "You know what? We didn't make enough money from the first story. Will you run another story?"
The mother's phone call prompted the reporter to carry out more research on the family. She was stunned and shaken to learn that the family was insured and their medical expenses had been covered all along.
It gives me goosebumps. It does. It does. That a mother would use her son to use her son's illness for their own gain.
The mother had testified that she'd been held hostage at Neverland. Mesereau was able to produce a witness who'd in fact given her a spa treatment at that time.
Did she call for help? No. Did she tell the person at the spa that she was being held against her will? No. What did she do? She had a body wax.
She went on shopping sprees and even had dental surgery, never once mentioning that she was being held captive. The defense knew that its attack on the mother would stick, thanks to the work of Chief Investigator Scott Ross. He'd uncovered a grifter scheme in which the accuser's mother taught her children how to con money from people.
She taught them what to say, and they said it. They had typed out notes that they would come home every day from school, and they would read from them. These kids were taught to disarm people. There was a consistent statement made by almost every witness that had dealings with the family that these kids would come up and greet them with a hug. These kids would write cards, "We love you, you're like a big sister to us, can we come stay at your house?" This was a pattern that they had set.
When the kids procured money, says Ross, the mother would put it in a special bank account.
She was the only one that had access to it. She was the only signer. She was filtering money through it.
Throughout the trial, the defense successfully portrayed the accuser as an astute young liar, scripted by his mother.
The 2005 trial hinged on the credibility of the Arvizo family, whose testimony unravelled under scrutiny. The defence effectively highlighted lies, contradictions, and a potential financial motive, while the prosecution failed to produce corroborating physical evidence. The Arvizo's testimonies were riddled with inconsistencies, ranging from provably false details to implausible scenarios. Jurors found the Arvizos unconvincing. One juror noted, "There wasn't a shred of evidence that was able to show us or give us any doubt in voting guilty," while another called Janet a scam artist. The initial jury vote was 9-3 for acquittal, shifting to unanimous after deliberation. The blatant and provable lies from the accusers, exposed through cross-examination, witness rebuttals, and a lack of corroborating evidence, and not Wade Robson's testimony, were pivotal in the jury's decision to acquit Jackson on June 13, 2005. If you want to know what the jury had to say, make sure you check out our Rumble channel, where we will post the Michael Jackson episode of The Jury Speaks. You will also find additional videos on Rumble, like the Ghost of Jealousy series, and all the live streams we have done for the project on our MJ Live channel. Links can be found in the description.
The family apparently was aware of prior allegations that had been made against Michael in the past, and had hinted that there was really nothing keeping them from doing something similar, unless... My understanding was they were very concerned and upset that they were not compensated for the Bashir documentary which had aired.
So you're saying before any of these allegations were made, that Michael Jackson was worried that there were going to be false allegations made?
I think from what he saw of this family, I think he had come to the realization that they were probably capable of just about anything.
What were you asked to do?
I was asked to find out where they were, get in contact with them, let them know that I wanted to meet with them, talk to them, and get an idea of what was going on, because my understanding was all of a sudden they had just disappeared from Neverland in the middle of the night.
And so are they sending the private eye out there to monitor them?
It certainly wasn't to control them in any way. It was to just keep a real loose watch on who they were meeting with and what they were doing. We then decided that before this goes any further, perhaps it's time to get a sworn statement from them stating what the circumstances were, if anything ever did happen, if it didn't.
So you wanted a sworn statement just in case?
Just in case, almost like an insurance policy. It was arranged for a few evenings later that I went over to the apartment of the mother's boyfriend in Los Angeles, and was welcomed, hugged by every member of the family.
What did you say?
I asked each of them if anything improper had ever happened. I asked about sleeping arrangements there, and was told by the two sons that neither one of them ever slept alone in Michael's room without the other one being present, that nothing ever happened, nothing out of the ordinary, nothing sexual.
You asked them specifically, did anything sexual ever happen?
I believe I asked if they were ever inappropriately touched or anything along those lines, and I was told absolutely not, that Michael was like a father. He was the only father the children had known.
No intimidation at all to make her make this tape?
Absolutely none, Dan.
You're there by yourself?
All by myself with my tape recorder.
Any people downstairs? Anyone other than you call them beforehand to say, you better do this?
Not to my knowledge.
And what did the children generally have to say about Michael Jackson?
Nothing but nice things. How gracious he was to them when they were at Neverland, how much they loved being at Neverland, and how they couldn't wait to go back to Neverland.
And if they were going to extort money, why make the criminal allegations as opposed to just suing them?
Well, it's been my experience that if you can get a criminal conviction against someone, it makes a civil case a slam dunk or much, much easier. I believe, from what I was told at the time and what I observed, when they started making threats, Michael realized this was not a family he needed around him. And I think he would have done anything he could at that time to distance himself from them. or to distance them from him? The answer to the question would be no, though.
So you're saying that Michael Jackson was already nervous that this family might make allegations against him?
I don't know that Michael was so nervous. They were trying to do whatever they could to take care of what they saw as a potential problem, a loose cannon, someone who was very well knowledgeable of the '93 event or allegations and had threatened to do something similar. And that's why it's so interesting that we have the same cast of characters.
You think the boy was up to that, or just his mother?
From what I understand, the boy apparently is also, or was, very much aware of the 1993 case.
So you think the 13-year-old, 12-year-old boy suffering from cancer is thinking about the big payout from Michael Jackson?
I will tell you, Dan, that this family, every conversation I had with them, every meeting I had with them, any interaction with them centered around either money, fame, celebrity, and or possessions.